If you're an Oregon apartment owner and you are wondering what you should be doing right now in order to maintain your property and keep it in tip-top shape, either to prevent future issues with maintenance and repair or to get ready for a future sale, you want to tune in for today's show. My guest today is Doug Palmer of Palmer Inspections. So Doug, you've been on the show a couple of times.
Yes.
Share with our audience maybe a one-sentence description of who you are and what an inspector does and why that's an important thing for an apartment owner to know.
Well, I started out as an electrician and then an electrical contractor. And during those years, we wired many houses and buildings and things like that. So I kind of grew up in the trade. And then 25 years ago, I started doing home inspections. And then that naturally led into doing commercial inspections for people like yourself who were agents selling commercial property. And then in the past 5 years, I've just specialized in commercial inspections. And that's all I do.
Tell us what's changed in the inspection world in, say, just the last 6 months and what owners need to hear about.
I think the cost of insurance skyrocketing has led insurance companies to require stricter underwriting, and buildings that haven't been maintained or have issues are less likely to get a good insurance rate. Mm-hmm. That's probably been the biggest change, is the insurance on commercial buildings.
Yeah, and I know we spoke in the last episode that you actually have been hired by insurance companies to go out and proactively inspect properties.
Right.
Are you still getting those calls?
Yes, not as many as like a year or so ago, but I think the word's out, so I think what I'm getting more of is owners putting their building up for sale, have a pre-inspection where I walk through it, inspect it just like I would for a buyer, and disclose all the issues that it may have or may not, and especially the ones that insurance companies are looking, like what kind of electrical panels are in the building, is the roof in good shape, what kind of plumbing there is, rot issues on the exteriors and decks and stairways and stuff like that.
Yeah, interesting. I'm going to have you do an inspection on one of my commercial buildings that I'm probably going to sell this year, but Doug may be injured his shoulder, so we may have to wait until he comes out of rehab and therapy, but you got to take care of your body parts, by the way.
I know. I think it was a fluke.
All right, that's fair enough. What does a truly proactive owner look like compared to a reactive owner? And tell us what the difference looks like, because I'm sure you see what I'd call the good, the bad, and the ugly for owners. So walk me through that. What does it look like when you go to a property to inspect an apartment complex and you can tell that it's well maintained and the owner is proactive versus somebody that's scrambling and now they're reactive?
Correct. Main two things I do see is they've hired a quality property manager who understands the processes and have quality maintenance people. I think the days of, Mr. Handyman coming in and, doing things may be over because they just don't always, take for example, they replace a water heater, but they don't finish hooking up the electrical. They leave the wires sticking out because the flex is too short, or the pipes weren't long enough, so they use a couple non-code extensions, stuff like that. The best buildings I've looked at is buyers who came in and bought the building and totally rehabbed it to where they get better quality tenants. People tend to take care of them better if you take care of them better, and I think that helps your rent roll.
Yeah.
Quite a bit.
I would definitely agree with that. If an owner wanted to build maybe a sample inspection list that they should do on an annual basis, what would be the top 5 things that you would tell an apartment owner that they should inspect?
Well, first, check the overall condition as you walk through an apartment, let's say. Has the tenant's been keeping it up, or are they destroying the carpet, or different issues, punching holes in the walls? But always check the kitchen under the sinks for leakage, rot going on from water damage. Same way with the bathroom, under the sinks. Check the toilet to see if it's loose. Loose toilets leak into the floor and rot them out very quickly. And then check around the tub.
Can we back up and talk about the toilet? Because you taught me this. So I'm going to tell you how you've taught me, and then you tell the audience whether this is right. You straddle the toilet and put your legs around it and wiggle it, right? That's the best way.
I grab it with my knees and shake it.
Yep.
Because I don't always want to touch them.
Yeah, amen.
I can always wash my jeans. So that's how I check it.
How long does a wax ring typically last in an average toilet? Because I know what you're talking about. You walk into a tenant's bathroom and you can see that discoloration in the vinyl, and instantly what I'm thinking is, oh, there's water damage occurring under that, and that's going to be a floor replacement.
Correct. Yeah, that's the big sign is when you see the vinyl discoloring, because vinyl's a petroleum product. The water underneath it starts drawing out the dark colors out of the petroleum and leaves that stain in there. Now a wax ring will last practically forever, if the toilet isn't moving a lot. Like, depends on how people use it and different things like that. But rocking back and forth and turning and stuff can start loosening up the bolts over time.
Yeah. I know you've seen this a lot too in campus properties, especially in the older ones. Those toilets are sometimes in weird positions or small little bathrooms, and so you have to reach to get to the toilet paper or whatever it is.
Yeah, so. And that rocking motion eventually loosens the bolts.
Yeah. Okay, so back
to my list.
I'm sorry.
Thoroughly check the water heater. There's been so many apartments I've gone into, and I asked the tenants, anything going on? No, it's fine. And then, where's the water heater? Oh, it's in the closet, and I get to it, and the pan's full of water because it's leaking. And, or, you just see drips coming from the connections. And then if the building is on a crawl space, I think the crawl space needs to be looked at least once a year or by, every 2 years, depending on the type of plumbing and drain pipes. But that's where I always find the big unknowns all the time, and it can be quite a mess.
Oh, that's so true. Yeah.
And look for ceiling leaks from a roof, and the exterior, look for water intrusion, rot in the decks and handrails and steps and trim and different things. It can be done very quickly. It's a long list. I'm sorry it's not 5.
No, I want the whole list, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yeah, but I'll find a lot of neglected decks and handrails and make sure they're sturdy. It's got to withstand so many pounds of pressure or somebody's going to break through it if they stumble and fall. So it becomes a big liability issue.
Yeah. What do you do with older apartment complexes when you're inspecting them? Because, if it was built in the 70s, the railing spacing is often not to code now. It used to be a soup can. What is it now for spacing on those?
Well, not more than 4 inches.
Okay.
They used to put them, I don't know what the code was, but basically a small child, like a toddler, 1, 2 years old that's walking, they can squeeze between them and fall. Like on a 2-story deck, you don't want that happening. Those all can be retrofitted. Even the stairway down from a townhome apartment, I've seen where they're just every 10 inches or something, they just put another spoke in between those to solve the issues. Or I've seen tenants themselves put chicken wire on their deck to keep kids from wandering over and falling through.
Those are some good suggestions. And then what do you do with particularly 2-story walk down concrete stairs? Because we see that a lot in the spacing for the stairs where, maybe it's on a single runner and that spacing of the stairs is off a little or it's not quite right. How do you address that?
The code for stair spacing has been ever since for a long time, and it can't be plus or minus 3/8 of an inch, because that, your brain knows where the next step is. You're going up, and if one's off, you'll stumble over it every time. At least I do, because I'm kind of testing for that. The stairs can be shimmed. If it's 3/8 or a 1/4 inch off, a layer of something over it, a 1/4 inch thick to get them all back into But what I find mostly what happens is, like in townhomes, apartments, they put wood planking floor, and they put it on top of all those stairs to make it look nice and put this big bullnose edge. And what I find is the top or bottom then doesn't measure the right distance. And those thick wood bullnose edges, I trip over them all the time. Just, they're just not right, but could end up being a safety issue.
What is one maintenance task that you see owners have a tendency to push off that you think, if you would just take care of that, it would improve your property and extend the longevity of it?
Well, water intrusion is the biggest issue with a building. Once the water starts leaking in and it gets rot, mold, different things like that. So on part of the annual checklist too could be, are the windows all have moisture on the inside of them because they're single pane windows, and you get that moisture in between the drapes and the window, and it's always wet and you can see it's moldy. But any kind of water issue, bathroom fans not being big enough to get the moisture out after people shower. I always recommend converting the bathroom fan to be not only a timer, but have a humidistat. So if the humidity gets over 70, 80%, it turns on and doesn't shut off until it's down below 50%. That causes a lot of issues. But roof leaks, I don't know why, they try to get a couple extra years out of a roof, but they're leaking, and that always causes a lot of damage.
So would you recommend maybe gutter cleaning? Is that one thing where you see the gutters fill up, water backs up, runs over?
It runs behind the fascia board and rots out the edge of the roof. Yeah, that's a given type of maintenance every, spring and fall, or depends on how many trees are around.
How would an owner use an inspection report to plan their capital expenditures that they would need to do to a property in, say, the next 3 to 5 years?
I would prioritize the immediate issues, what's going to cause the most damage now, like a leaking toilet or a leaking shower surround. I've seen it. They're leaking and they're going into the wall and they're going down to the apartment below it, or you look up the ceilings and there's stains from a leak above there, because the bathrooms are usually stacked on top of each other. So doing those sort of things first, and then, be proactive with the roof. It goes back to a proactive owner having a good management company, and a good maintenance is many times it's leaking under a kitchen sink. And I said, do you guys know this is doing it? Yeah. Did you call it in? Yes, but they've never gotten back to me. They've never come to fix it. And you got to keep up on maintenance.
Yeah, I would agree. We've laughed about the bowls and the buckets that we see under sinks where it has a stain for the water, where the water is dried up and it's caught it and dried up, and it's like, wow, that bowl's probably been there a year or 2 or 3 or 5. Yeah. What's the difference between what I would call a maintenance repair and more like a capital improvement? And in your opinion, why does that matter substantially?
The maintenance issue is you do the repairs as needed, just to keep your tenant happy, stop any damage happening to your property, and then you can budget the capital improvements. I've had a couple owners over the years that they buy the building, there's a couple vacant, so they rehab those apartments first. They bring them new cabinetry, new flooring, everything, make it look really good. Then as each one turns over, they redo it until it's such a nice place that I've been into those properties because he's now starting to sell those. And they're still in really good shape. He gets good tenants. He sometimes even offers them to put in a mini split heat pump for heating and cooling, because most apartments don't have older apartments don't have cooling when they sign like a 2-year lease or something. And he amortizes that raises the rent $25 or something, and over 2 years it helps pay it back. And just being proactive and keeping your tenants happy. Because unhappy tenants are the ones that turn you into the rental association.
Yeah, that's true.
Threaten to go to the city over mold and different issues.
Yeah. You know, you bring up a really good point about the split HVAC systems because I know eWeb offers a program for landlords. I did one in a single family residence that my son lives in, and I think it cost me $95 a month, but it was basically interest free, and I just raised his rent. Yes, I charged my own son rent. Charged him.
I do too.
See, $95 more in rent, and it's covered. And you know, it really makes a difference in the summer months for the tenants.
Well, also you're bringing the cost of the heating down
Yeah,
because they only use about a third of the electricity
yeah.
as a wall heaters or just a standard furnace.
Well, and I think we also see tenants consistently keep a more even keel on their heat so that they don't crank it down to 62. And we've talked about in the past, that's how you start to get moisture and the mold issues and the mushrooms that are growing in the carpet because there's too much humidity in the air because it's too cold. With those heat pumps, it seems like it's a little more consistent.
Yeah, well, it moves the air, dries things out. A heat pump naturally dries the air.
Oh, I didn't know that.
That's why they have drain tubes.
Yeah.
When the air goes over the coils, heats or cools it, and the moisture falls out of it and it drains outside. So they're kind of a natural dehumidifier.
Yeah, and part of the annual inspection report, you should have your heat pump cleaned, once a year inspected?
Well, the mini splits, there's a little filter up on them that you can clean every quarter if there's a lot of dust and dirt in the air in which it lives. But then the outdoor unit, it's always good to keep the pine needles off of it and hose it all down to keep stuff from clogging up the coils.
So Doug, are there any new materials or building systems that are coming into older Oregon properties that are actually already starting to cause some problems? I'm thinking about the older properties where owners go in and renovate those units. Are you seeing any of that in your inspections?
Yes, there's some products from the 90s that they had the synthetic stucco, which wasn't properly installed, that sort of thing. Actually, big medical complex I just did had quite a bit of leaking issues once you got a moisture meter in there and infrared scanning. But one of the biggest things I see is they renovate siding and windows and different things, but they use this prime spruce trim. Mm-hmm. And I've been finding that stuff, it's great. It's kind of a manufactured wood, but they finger joint it all together and it's primed and it looks really nice, but it doesn't last 2 or 3 years and it starts to rot.
Wow.
Around the weep holes on windows and up around the top of the windows where the water comes off the siding. It's just not a good product.
So if you were going to make a recommendation to somebody on replacing that, what type of wood would you recommend?
They have synthetic, like hardy plank is cement board. Well, they also have, and the plastic wood Trex decking and stuff like that. They do have now synthetic trims.
Really?
That are being used. That they don't rot because they don't have any wood in them.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. And obviously they're paintable. Is that right?
Yeah, they come primed already. Yeah.
Wow. Interesting. I didn't even know that was a thing. For an owner who wants to hold their properties for, say, another 10 years, what should they be investing in right now in order to protect their property and their equity?
Maybe slowly replace outdated systems. Unfortunately, if the building's earlier than 1970, it may have galvanized plumbing. A lot of times cast iron drains are okay, but I would slowly replace that because the insurance companies, the rates on having that kind of plumbing are really high because they know it's only good for 50 years. So
yeah,
some of these places are older than that. And maybe they're not leaking, but they're going to. Mm-hmm. And so you could start updating older systems. If you have old electrical panels that aren't the modern type, it's another thing you could do slowly. Mm-hmm. So it's not a big shock all at once to replace those. And make sure the heating, old baseboards could be replaced with more modern cadet wall heaters or mini split heat pumps systems, but they could do a little bit at a time, until it's all completed.
Interesting. Okay. So I do have a question about replacing galvanized plumbing. Obviously, you're going to probably hire a plumber. You're going to notify your tenants. You're going to shut the water off. And then if it's like a 2-story apartment complex and it's the top unit, how do they replace galvanized plumbing? Because doesn't a lot of that run in the walls?
Yes.
How do they do that?
What they do is, like, if it's apartment above, apartment below, and this one happened to be a concrete slab, when those two became vacant, they stripped the walls that had the plumbing in it, replaced it, but they also, because they were having sewer issues, had to jack up the floor and replace the sewer pipes that were gone, that are rusted out under the slab. I'm thinking more of an apartment complex that has a crawl space. What I did in my own house, I had one old bathroom that was all galvanized, but the pipe comes up the wall and comes out to the angle stop shut off. Just drill a hole right from the cabinet straight under the house and put 2 PEX pipes down, and then just start cutting all that galvanized plumbing out and replace it.
Wow.
So the pipes come up on the surface, which is what they do in a manufactured home anyway, like a mobile home. They're not in the wall, they come up on the surface.
Interesting.
So it's an easy way to do that.
Okay. I know that is a question that I get from a lot of buyers because they're getting that question from their insurance company.
Right.
Have the systems been updated? What's the plumbing? When was the plumbing last updated? When was the electrical last updated? So, yeah. How do proactive inspections affect a buyer's ability for better insurance terms? Let's go with a seller, because a lot of people are still in that sweet spot where they own a property that they like. They know the bones of it. They're happy with it. But as you and I have talked in past episodes, we're starting to see insurance premiums go up anywhere from 20 to 30%. And other costs are starting to rise. And so I think a lot of people still want to keep what they have. And so they're trying to figure out, how do I minimize my impact? And I guess my question to you is, if somebody had you come and inspect their electrical and their plumbing, how would they use that to maybe improve their situation?
Well, there again, it just depends on what do they have. If it's on the blacklist from insurance companies, then they could slowly start updating that, plumbing or electrical panels especially. What I always say is, all those building materials, it's not like wine. They don't get better with age. They just go downhill. And same way with old panels and the circuit breakers. You're relying on it for safety. If they're not the modern type, then they could be proactive in replacing those. And of course, that'll get you better insurance rates.
That was going to be my next question, is related to, how does the condition of a property, in your opinion, help with insurance premiums? Obviously, the newer the property, the better you're going to have for insurance. And then also affecting tenant retention. What do you see with that? Do you see there's a direct connection with tenant retention in relation to condition of property?
Do you want to be an owner of a property that looks good and the tenants are happy and they stay? Or you're trying to squeeze the most money out of it as you can, and you become a slumlord? I see plenty of those still, but they're becoming few and far between because of the new rental complaint line. The complaints drive owners into getting that stuff fixed.
Yeah. The interesting thing about people that try to squeeze every penny out of a property and become slumlords, when they do decide to sell, I watch a lot of that profit, so to speak, or money that they squeezed out of it that they didn't put back in for maintenance and repair. They wind up giving it up at the closing table.
For repairs that should have been done.
Yeah, because a buyer can't get the loan, or they can't get insurance, or they just don't want to buy it in a bad condition.
Well, especially roofs.
Yes.
They're very expensive nowadays. And that's how the insurance companies are using satellite photos when they're doing the underwriting, and say, that roof looks like it's bad. And then I've gotten a job to go out and look at it. It turns out the roof's not bad. It was just a bunch of leaves on it that you couldn't tell what was going on, or it looks like it's covered in moss or something, and once it's cleaned up, the roof's in great shape. So that's, there again, just maintenance, that flat roofs have, need to be cleaned a couple times a year, and the gutters cleaned out, and if it's got scuppers, the little things that take the water out and down its bounce, they got to be cleaned out because they back up, and now you've got a swimming pool up there that's 6 inches deep, and that puts hydraulic pressure on finding a hole to get, the water starts going down into the building. Yeah.
Whoever thought flat roofs in Oregon was a good idea?
They're still doing it.
I know. I own a building with a flat roof.
Yeah.
I have it cleaned twice a year at a minimum, so I understand.
Yeah.
But I've had that situation where a neighbor's tree was growing over and filling up my gutter in the back corner of the property. Water started to pool in that corner, and then it started pouring into a light fixture, because it came in through, the scupper was backed up. So yeah, it happens quick.
Yes.
When your tenant calls and says, we have water leaking through a light fixture, you respond promptly.
Right. You better.
What's the fastest way that an owner unknowingly creates liability issues that could end up costing them in the end?
Well, probably still goes back to poor maintenance. Nobody really looks at, like, a lot of these older apartment buildings have 2 stories, and the stairs are all on the outside. And so you've got this walkway on the 2nd story, and that's got wood railings and decking, and then stairs that go down. And I find that nobody looks at those. I've had a case where this property had a lot of apartments, like probably over 100. So they had like 2 permanent maintenance guys. That's all they did is get a ticket and go fix things every day. But you got kind of this tunnel vision where, got to go to apartment, 222 and put in a new water heater. And there's been cases where these outside stairways and decks have rot in them and nobody notices. One case in point where I think I've talked about it before, where it was a 3-story deck system, and the bottom timber was mushroomed out like this from rot. And so it was sinking, near condition of collapse. The maintenance guys walk by it every day. But that's what happens when I look at a building. I've never been there before, and I'm looking for issues. And so I can be a little more focused. I've walked past issues at my own house because I'm there all the time, and I don't notice subtle changes until I put on my inspector hat. My wife, we go out to dinner, and we're sitting in a restaurant. I go, oh, look at that, look at that, look at that. She gets a kick out of it. Well, not so much of a kick, but all the time. But
yeah, I bet you do see interesting things where you see an electrical cord with black electric tape around it or duct tape, and you're like, oh, that's not code.
Yep.
If someone is watching that owns a 20 to 30 unit apartment building in Oregon, what's the single most important thing that they should do in, say, the next 30 to 60 days?
When was the last time they had a walkthrough? And it can be done by the management company. It doesn't have to be me as an inspector, as long as you have a competent person that's doing that. And the best time to do that, I don't know how often management companies do this, but they do a walkthrough at least every 6 months so they can check the smoke detectors. Even though it's the tenant's responsibility, you go in and find, one had a low battery, so they took it down, and now they don't have that safety protection. But yeah, just a current walkthrough. Also, you're checking on the condition of the apartment. Or do they have a motorcycle engine disassembled on the front carpet, which I've seen.
Me too. I should mention they had the bathtub filled with solvent to soak the motorcycle parts.
Yes.
Which I think is flammable. I'm not an expert on that.
It is highly flammable.
Yeah, it was about that deep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what the tenant's keeping it up inside. I'm doing an inspection. I had the management company there that was doing their thing, like testing the smoke detectors and stuff. And they would say, so-and-so, that's not part of the rules here. You need to clean, like there might be 10 bags of trash in the corner. It's like, no, you got to clean that up. And so every 6 months is a good thing to walk through just by the management company. It's part of their job is to, ask the people, are there any maintenance issues you haven't reported?
That's a really good point. Now, remind me on smoke detectors also. Are there still smoke detectors where the battery can come out, or are they all encased in one?
The newer ones are 10-year battery. They're sealed. You can't, after 10 years, you throw them away and get a new one. So there is still some older ones, yes.
And those older ones, as long as you replace the battery, they work perfectly fine.
Right. I found that, like in my own house, it's really interesting. There's like 3 different types of batteries, and if you don't put the correct one in, it'll still keep beeping. I've had that happen, sending an electrician out to a place, and it's beeping, and I've replaced the battery, and I go and look, and it calls for a lithium battery, and they put an alkaline battery in. So it's electronics still think it's a problem. But there becomes a point where it senses the air gets so much dust and debris in it, you need to change the unit out.
Okay.
Which is about every 10 years.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And the rule is you're supposed to have one near every bedroom or in every bedroom?
Well, the current code is in every bedroom, one in every bedroom, and one in a hallway that's not longer than 15 feet, I think. Then you have to have 2, one at each end. So no bedroom is any farther than, I think, 10 feet from a smoke detector. So you have to have them there. You have to have them in every bedroom. Most of the new houses will put a smoke detector in the family room and places like that.
Mm-hmm. And then you have to have a CO2 if you have an attached garage.
Right.
Or any gas to the house, gas fireplace, gas appliances.
Right. Or LP, like propane.
Okay.
Fireplace.
Yeah, great. So I recently had an electrician at my personal residence, and he was chasing an electrical issue that I had with flashing lights, blinking lights. And Doug had come over and helped direct me on troubleshooting it. And we wound up chasing that up to the garage. I have a 2-story house, and we wound up finding an old electrical outlet in the garage that had a wire that was crimped. So while they were in the garage, I asked them to replace all the electrical outlets also, and they notified me that now code is I think you have to have GFIs now because it's on concrete. Correct. I didn't know that.
It's interesting. Almost every outlet in the house has to be a special type now.
Really?
Yeah.
Talk to me about that.
On new construction. Well, all the plugs, outlets in the house have to be on a arc fault breaker.
Okay.
And circuit breaker works in 2 ways. One is temperature. So if you're overloading it, it gets to a temperature where it goes above where it's supposed to be, and then the breaker trips off by a thermal spring, right? The other is a dead short. Like if you take a hot wire and a neutral wire and you're touching there, boom, you get the pop. That will trip them. But nowadays, we're finding a lot of wires or a lot of, like say, these cords that are on the floor around your desk. People are rolling over them with their chairs, and it frays them. And it gets to the point where the electricity is trying to jump across that little gap. So you're getting a little arcing there. That arcing gets to the point where it sets the carpet on fire, sets the wood floor on fire. So they came up with these new circuit breakers that if it senses any arcing like that, they shut off. So all the outlets in the house have to have arc fault breakers now in all the common areas. Then you have to have GFI breakers or outlets in kitchens, bathrooms, garages, outdoor outlets. And that's been a code for a long time now. And a new one is even the outlet for the garage door opener has to be on a GFI, because what people were doing is a guy gets a cord and runs it out to his electric lawnmower, and it keeps tripping the GFI, right? So he gets up on a ladder, plugs it into the outlet above the garage door, goes outside, starts it, and kills himself because there was a ground fault in the lawnmower.
Wow.
On wet grass, maybe barefoot would be the kind of condition that it had. So now that has to be protected. So the code's trying to protect people from themselves.
Yeah. That's so interesting.
Yeah.
I bet when your son-in-law Eric does residential inspections, he has to meticulously look at all the outlets. And
Right. Well, and it's the code was in effect at the time. We have cheat sheets that tell us, oh, this house was built in 2010. Well, it should have this and this.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So, Doug, if people want to find you and talk to you about an inspection, how do they reach out to you? Is it Palmer Commercial Inspections?
My business name is Doug Palmer LLC technically now, but I just specialize in commercial inspections. The residential side, my son-in-law does those, and it's Eric Llewellyn Inspections. But if you call my office number,
Which is?
541-434-5900, you'll get a recording that asks you, do you want a commercial inspection or do you want a residential inspection? So you press 1 for this and press 2 for that, and it goes directly to our cell phones.
Oh, that's slick.
And then
Okay.
we can talk to them right then.
That's great. We'll put that in the show notes as well. Doug, thanks for being here today.
Thank you.
It's been a lot of fun. I always learn things from you, and I'm very grateful.
Yeah,
So
well,
thank you.
you're welcome. Thank you. Always a pleasure.